Welcome everyone. I think Instagram kicked this out because of the music, but it's funny because it's non-copyright. Don't drink up the give juice. How are you? Let me just get this pinned comment back in. My motto is Instagram be hating. Always. Always. You know, we try to comply. We use like the music that doesn't have any lyrics, but they still got us. So we're just gonna wait for our guest to come in, and then I'm gonna read her introduction and we'll get started. So hope everyone's doing well. Miss TNT, how are you? Yeah, I think that song was a no. Let me see if I can do another one. Okay, I have a request from our guest. Cool. So let's get started. So welcome back everyone to Testimony Tuesdays. For those who are joining in for the first time, I'm your host, DoctorBeauty, and I've been running this page since 2017, and we just started Testimony Tuesdays last September. So I basically started this platform as a means of interviewing people of various walks of life about their personal and professional testimonies, and it's been really great getting to know the different stories of so many people who have overcome the most unimaginable trials and tribulations, but the fact that they're still standing and pursuing their dreams every single day and making things happen in their communities is what really inspires me and everyone who watches the show, each interview. So I'm happy to be able to serve as that platform for this content. So our guest for this evening is TJ Robinson at TJSWellness Coaching, and I'm going to read her introduction and then bring her into the room. TJ Robinson is a proud alumnus of CSU Dominguez Hills with an MA in Interdisciplinary Studies, Africana Psychology. She is currently pursuing her PhD at Claremont Graduate University in the Cultural Studies program. During her time at CGU, she has obtained certificates in Africana Studies and Applied Women and Gender Studies. In 2015, Robinson's article, The Healing Element of the Spirituals, published in the Journal of Pan-African Studies. She is a co-author of Amazon bestseller, The Beauty in My Mess, Volume 1, published in 2018. Robinson also contributed to the Black Power Encyclopedia, which was published in 2018. Currently, Robinson is an adjunct lecturer at CSU Los Angeles and CSU Long Beach, and is a certified life and spiritual coach. She also heads the Alafia Ocean Retreat. She's a founder and executive director of Natural We Community, a nonprofit which focuses on the healing, empowerment, and celebration of Black African people and culture. Robinson enjoys helping others, attending her home church, New Providence Baptist Church, and spending time with her nieces, nephews, friends, and loved ones, and playing with her dog, Xena. So everyone, please put in your clapping emojis in the chat as I bring in TJ Robinson. Good evening.
Hello. How are you?
I'm doing well, and yourself?
I am well. Thank you for having me. So excited.
Oh, same here, and I'm honored to have you as my guest. For those who don't know, our previous guest interviewed, I think our interview was 4 weeks ago. She is the one who connected us. So thank you so much for that connection.
Yes, Dr. Tiffany, I think she was in the other live, and she should be coming back in. But absolutely, I'm excited about this connection.
Yes, yeah, I think the song I was playing Instagram was like, nope, and just shut it down. So
they do that.
Yeah,
they do that.
Yeah. I don't know why they do that, but okay.
I've had videos muted from like 2 years ago, and I'm like, really? You want to say it now?
I had the same notification a few weeks back. I'm like, all right, if you see it's, that necessary. Yeah. So before we start, I always go with an icebreaker question, just like for fun to get to know interviewees better. So if you could choose one meditative practice to do for the rest of the year, what would it be and why?
Oh, I would be journaling and swimming in the ocean for the rest of the year. That is my happy place. That is where I go to woosah and calm down, and I can literally be there at any time, day or night. So that's my answer.
Awesome. That sounds super relaxing.
Thank you. Oh, hey, cuz. I see my cousin and see Dr. Tiffany. Hey, y'all.
Hey, welcome back. See, we're expanding our network, so it's good to connect with all of you. Yes. And so, from your introduction, we learned that you have an educational background, which includes Africana Psychology. So could you tell us more about what this discipline entails?
Yes. So it starts with my undergrad. I actually double majored for my bachelor's degree in Africana Studies and Psychology because I just knew that I was going to be a clinical psychologist with my own private practice and be a basketball or track coach. That was what I was going to college to do. But then I took this class in Africana Studies. Just blew my mind. And with my master's, it wasn't enough just to have psychology. And I needed to have an integration. And I found out about the Association of Black Psychologists, ABPSI, and how they really look at the mental health, well-being, and full healing of our people. And so for my master's, I decided to combine two master's programs into one under Interdisciplinary Studies, and I named my master's. I was actually able to name my master's degree and named it Africana Psychology. And it's just really looking at the psychology from our own cultural background. We were the original psychologists before Western psychology. So how do we use our culture, our beliefs, our faith, and our people in order to really heal ourselves while also learning about ourselves? So Africana Psychology.
That is amazing that you were able to name your own major. And I think it really entails everything that you said, which is looking at the cultural implications of psychology, because it does vary based on the cultural norms. And as you mentioned, the origin in Africa. So that's amazing. And so was it difficult at all navigating a new major for you?
Yes. It was challenging. On one hand, you're being challenged with new material, with the rigor of academia and getting to that master's level. But then it's also merging these, in some ways, these two warring ideas, thinking about the clinical Western aspect of psychology and trying to bridge that together to satisfy my requirements, but still do what I wanted to do. I was in some ways going against the grain, but I'm thankful to have had just supportive faculty members who helped me navigate that and helped inspire me, and my family and my friends, my loved ones was like, you got it. You've always gone against the grain, so just keep going and go from there. And the other aspect of that was I look at healing. So within African psychology, Africana psychology, I really engage healing. And so thinking about healing and that deep inner work, it's also confronted with your own things. And so I was navigating that while trying to be this academic. So it was difficult. It was challenging, but it was worth it. And I wouldn't trade it for anything.
Well, yeah, you mentioned something really relatable, because when it comes to the holistic medicine that I've heard about in, the African cultures that we hear, it conflicts with a lot of that Western educational system. And so it doesn't mean that it's any less true, because, it's just not what they say in these universities. But it's good that you were able to merge the two and still meet those requirements of your degree program.
Thank you.
Yeah. And so you went on to pursue your PhD in cultural studies. So
Yes.
can you tell us a little bit about what inspired you to pursue that degree?
So I knew that I wasn't going to be a psychologist anymore, although psychology, Africana psychology still informs what I do. But it became evident that I am to be a teacher, an educator. And I wanted to pursue African studies, Africana studies, but at the same time, I did not want to leave LA. I just felt like I'm purposed here right now in this stage in my life. I started the nonprofit, which I'm sure we'll talk about later. So I needed to find a program that would still let me engage what I want to engage. So cultural studies at Claremont Graduate University. I am in my last year. And thank you. And so I was able to get a couple certificates along the way. First, I was able to get another master's, and then I was also able to get an Africana Studies certificate, an Applied Women and Gender Studies certificate, and a Hemispheric Studies certificate. So not only do I engage our people, Black people here in the United States, but also on the continent and in the Caribbean and Latin America with my studies and my interactions and what I do. So it's just been content-wise, and what I'm engaging in, and as far as my research, has just been a really, really good fit, and I'm happy.
That's amazing. And you're getting comments congratulating you. It's your last.
Oh, thank you.
It's going to speed by quickly. And one thing that I've always been interested in, because I actually got my major in undergrad in biological anthropology. So I always love learning about different cultures. And, within those certificates that you earned, what were some of the differences that you saw in terms of the different regions, like the Caribbean, the continent of Africa, when it came to women's studies and cultural studies?
So one thing, and you said bioanthropology?
Yes.
Okay. I've heard of cultural anthropology, but not bioanthropology. So I'm really, really intrigued. Thank you, Tiff. Thanks, sister. Last year, you're done. But one of the things that I've seen is in regards to kind of like some of the spiritual practices. So there's the same foundation, but some of the nuances may be a little bit different. Or thinking about the Caribbean and Latin America, so kind of like start talking about the Afro-Latina or Afro-Latinx. And so that emerging of the Spanish culture within makes some different nuances. But when you really peel back the layers, they're not so different. There's been an adaptation because of the cultural environment or the geographical location. But it doesn't mean that it's so vastly different that we can't come together, that we can't unify, and that it doesn't mean that there's different healing practices. Some of them might be actually the same, but they're just called something different given language and translation. So that's one example.
Right. That's interesting that you brought that up, because it always comes down to just what we call it in so many different cultures. And when you start describing, you're like, oh yeah, I have that in my culture too. It's just called this, so that's really amazing that you were able to make those connections, because we are part of one human body. And even though we have those little differences, we have that, common human nature.
Yeah, it's fun. Because I think a lot of times when you think about those differences, it's seen as something divisive. But when we really think about those differences, they're really a point for us to come together and look at our strengths and look at where others might be strong. In order to come together, if you think about the body, right? The hand is far different from the foot, but we still need it. And it's still part of that same cultural heritage. So as Barbara Wade Noble says, only difference is the boat stop. Right, it's a different boat stop, but we're still one and the same, and being able to bring that together and come together has really been great. I've met beautiful people from Nigeria, Kenya, Bahamas, Barbados, Brazil, just everywhere. And when we are all together in a room, unless we start speaking and there's different accents, you really don't know. But, the head nod is the head nod, and it's like, oh, okay, sis, I see you. And the melanin glow is the melanin glow. And we just keep going and pushing it from there. And that becomes just great. Right, to a point of convergence. So absolutely.
I love that. And I love that analogy that you brought up as well about the body and how all the different parts look differently, but they come together for a common function. So that's a great way to look at the human race in general. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And then, you also had a publication in 2015 titled The Healing Element of the Spirituals, and it was published in the Journal of Pan-African Studies. So could you tell us a little bit about what inspired that title and the publication?
So that title actually comes from a section of my master's thesis. My master's thesis was therapeutic techniques, the healing element of the spirituals. And so I engaged the spirituals. They're also called sorrow songs. They're also called Negro spirituals. I call them spirituals. And really looked at the therapeutic setting, from the intake to the coping strategies to, the outtake or the closure, all of these things. What were African people doing as their therapy? And how did our music, how did our culture, how did our spirituality play a role in healing before the Arab slave trade, healing before the transatlantic slave trade or Middle Passage, and then that survival and that coping strategy during enslavement and even afterwards, and how it continues to be a theme, and how music continues to heal, especially our music tradition. I call it the African music tradition or the Black music tradition, and looking at that. And so that's what I did with that particular piece.
That's amazing. That made me think when you talked about the transatlantic slave trade and everything, about the different application of healing when it comes to a collective of people versus individual healing. So is that a concept that you addressed in your thesis or any of your publications?
So in the particular one that we're talking about, I did not address it in terms of individual versus collective, because I was focusing on the collective. But what I will say, and what I'm moving into with my dissertation, is a little bit more individual focused, but also collective, in terms of how can Africana psychology be used to heal anxiety, PTSD, and PTSD, and what happens when it's a collective group session versus an individual, but how is it from a cultural perspective, and looking at how African people have used spirituality and culture to really heal themselves. And so I'm arguing for a return to that, and more of an emphasis to that, because we can't continue to rely on practices that have also been used to oppress us.
Yeah, I definitely hear that. And, I think especially in recent times when we've had the police brutality and so many collective traumatic events, it's definitely a time that speaks to the power of spiritual healing. And these issues, which are really mental health issues, are coming more to the forefront, whether it be depression, anxiety, all of those are coming to the forefront, and it's not so much of a taboo anymore. And so, especially in this community, we're having more conversations about that. And it's, I think we were talking about it, Dr. Tiffany and I last time, about how art can help address that as well. And so have you talked about that in your work as well, art being part of the healing process?
I've talked about art in my classes. I've taught an Africana art class. I've also taught a hip hop class and music class, and looked at how art was actually an integral role in hip hop, and not just the music. But also I have a African World Peoples and Societies class that I've taught that really engages the role of art. There's Chinua Achebe talks about the Igbo world and its art, and looking at the divinity and the spirituality and the intentionality in terms of how a sculpture appears, in terms of how architecture happens or how a painting happens, and how that is also healing and thinking through and everything. So I am all for all healing modalities. I think far too often we think that there's only one way to heal, when in reality, healing is trial and error. Healing is, okay, well, today the journaling is going to work, but tomorrow that journaling just needs to go on ahead and sit down, and I need to go on ahead and play Ludacris, slap, and then go into Kelly Price, Tired, and then go into I'm Going Down, and then I guess I'll end with Twista and Faith Evans and Hope, so that I can just get through my feelings and get it all the way out. But then another time that might not be the case. Another times I might just really just I need to feel safe. I just need a hug. And in those moments, we have to gauge what our journey is going to be and not be afraid of the journey. And African culture and spirituality has really taught me that this life is a journey, and that when we embrace the journey and take that step, even if we're afraid to heal, and allow ourselves to be open to nature, to be open to all that God has to offer, we're in a much better place.
Right. Yeah, I like that you mentioned how not only is life a journey, but also the healing process is a journey. And it's not a linear process. We have our ups and downs. We have sometimes a flood of emotions. Sometimes it's just one emotion that we have to address. And it's also interesting that you mentioned that one healing technique may not serve us every day. Sometimes we have to switch it up, and we just have to really be intuitive about that. So, I mean, that's really very true.
One thing I've really noticed in terms of therapy, and looking at Western psychology and Africana psychology, is this focus, especially in Africana psychology and our culture, is that Africana psychology tells us we have all that we need to heal within ourselves. That we are able to listen to our bodies, we are able to listen to our mind and our spirit and figure out what we need in moments. Now, sometimes we might need help facilitating that, but we have all that we need. Whereas my experience in Western psychology has been far from the case. For example, when I was in therapy, I told the therapist, I said, I do not need medication. Of course, gave me medication, and that was the worst 3 months of my life. And so I just quit it cold turkey one day. I just stopped and was like, I'm going to the ocean. I am going to go on a nature walk. I'm going to journal. And this therapist had even told me to stop singing. I love to sing, and she had even told, right. Thank you, Dr. Beauty. Thank you for that face. I was like, you want me to die, because singing is breathing. And but when I started to sing again, I felt better, and I felt like things were being released. And so I stopped that medication and allowing myself to really trust myself again. One thing with PTSD and anxiety is that we lose trust in ourselves, and we don't feel safe within our own selves and within our own bodies. But when we are given space to listen to ourselves, my godfather gives me space to listen to myself all the time. I can just talk to him, and I'm so grateful because I can just work through it and like, oh, that's what I needed to say to myself. Okay, now I can go on and go from there. And using the elements of this earth, we have a great big world that God created, all of this earth, and then we're being told not to use it. We're being told not to use the crystals. We're being told not to use the herbs, but instead use the fake stuff. No. Catch me in Africana psychology and with my own spirituality, with my own cultural beliefs all the way.
Right. Well, and the thing is too, a lot of those medications, I'm in healthcare as well, they have side effects. They have a lot of side effects that patients really need to be educated on, because not everyone's going to respond to those same medications the same way. Mm-hmm. And you really have to listen to your body. It's a two-way street. We don't really try to enforce a paternalistic view of medicine, because the doctor has to listen to the patient and vice versa. It's, so if you followed your intuition and you're like, you know what, this isn't serving me right now, I'm going to turn to this belief system, and that worked for you. And that's really great, because, giving up singing, come on. Like,
listen,
because I love singing.
I was like, you gotta give me an anxiety attack here in this therapy room. on. Don't sing and stop praying. Like, no, these are things that we culturally do, and these are things that help us. Now, am I going to say use it as a scapegoat? No, I know when I'm blasting the music to not deal with my own thoughts. And then yes, there is some accountability, but an all out complete stop, no. And especially not when we are still in this environment where we are dealing with the daily stressors and daily triggers and things of that point. Yeah, Tiffany, catch me in psychology, and I see someone say truth and everything. Mm-hmm. But absolutely. And I make no apologies for it. And I do not think that I think far too often, especially women, are told to apologize for their healing journey and apologize for asking questions. And I just feel like when we take that fake apology away, or that forced apology away, we experience a liberation and freedom like never before that fully allows us to operate in our truth and our gifts and our healing. And we are far more better for it in order to connect with our divine feminine.
Right. I love that. There's so many points that you brought up just about utilizing nature to heal yourself. And that made me think of another conversation that I had with Dr. Tiffany. A lot of what both of you said intersect so much. So that's why I keep bringing her up. And
that's my sis. That's my sis.
You know? But when it comes to food, even down to food and what we put in our bodies, it just has that connection with the mental as well. It's like what we surround ourselves with, what we put in our bodies, those positive words of affirmation, knowing what hobbies bring us joy. I think just knowledge of self is a healing process in itself, you know, because we get so distracted by everything on the outside. And once we come back to, okay, it's music, it's cooking, it's gardening that really fulfills me, and you do that, if you find at least a couple minutes a day to do that, it really does make a difference in your happiness and in your mental health.
Yes, Dr. Tiffany gardens quite often. I wish I had a green thumb, but the way my thumb is set up, I start to cry because I kill the plants. So it just makes me so sad. But this thought of grounding and really standing firm and getting our hands in the earth and just reconnecting like that is so beautiful. And I'm thankful for those who are able to garden and ground. I will buy your plants, but I will not grow them. I will just support the Black dollars.
Yeah. I can't say I have much of a green thumb either. That's all my mom. But, you know, I can water them, but, you know, I'm not really that intuitive when it comes to that. But
I'm glad I'm not the only one. Thank you, Dr. Beauty. Because I was feeling so bad. I named a lavender plant Hope. My grandpa I was like, Grandpa, help me. He's like, okay, get you a lavender plant. And so I named it Hope. I was like, yes, we are full of hope. We're going to go, right? Oh. I sent my grandpa a picture. He's like, you should have named it Hopeless. You're done. You're done, Grandpa. You're done. Yeah. I think plants are selective in their what would we call it? Their planters. Like they have an attitude sometimes. They're like, oh, I don't like her. I don't think I'm gonna let me grow. It's like, let us all be great. Oh, please, but fine. Good. You hang out with Dr. Tiffany, and I'll just enjoy the animals and call it a day. I'll hang out with the horses, dogs, and dolphins.
Exactly. Yes. And, you talked about teaching earlier too, and you're an adjunct lecturer at 2 universities in California. So how long have you held this title, and has your job been impacted at all by the pandemic?
I have been a professor since, 2014. Sometimes it seems longer. I've really been in some type of teaching, educating, since I was in high school. And right out of college, my undergrad, I actually taught, the autistic spectrum and emotionally disturbed, and was a behavior therapist and things. But anyway, as an adjunct, I have been since 2014. I love teaching. I love my students. They are awesome. Zoom teaching is interesting. I miss the classroom. Some of my students affectionately call me Professor Auntie TJ. And so, I really am. Some of them call me a young Medea, but that's another story for another day. But I need to move, I need to see my students. I need to just pat you on the back, rub your back real quick, I need you to hear me. So creating that community on Zoom has been very, very interesting. It's been very challenging. But I understand that we also need to make sure that everybody is safe. And so I am eager to go back into the classroom, but I'm also not in so much of a hurry that we do ourselves bodily harm. It's just one of those where I've seen, okay, it's a challenge. How do I meet the students, even in this arena, and go from there? Yeah, it is culturally, it is also important to know the person, psychologist, psychiatrist. Absolutely. Absolutely. That's a great comment. And going from there. So, but I wouldn't trade it for the world, I wouldn't.
Yes, just bouncing off that comment, that is so important, because I've seen a lot of people online who, I believe Instagram and Twitter and other platforms have become somewhat of a mental health platform where people are looking for therapists who look like them, and they don't have all the resources there. So there are some websites out there where you can schedule Zoom meetings with therapists, and I think you can even select what type of therapist you're looking for. But that is definitely important, that cultural competence portion, because they have to be able to understand how you view the world and how you see yourself in the world in order to understand why you're feeling the way that you're feeling. And textbook.
The Association of Black Psychologists, abpsi.org, actually has a place where you can actually go and look and find African-centered Black psychologists in your area on their website. And with COVID, there's actually been quite a few platforms, as Dr. Beauty said. Black Men Heal Therapy, there's Black Women Heal. There's quite a few others that are actually, you can actually sign up for free mental health services if you need as well, and definitely distinguish if they are a psychologist or a psychiatrist. It makes a world of difference, and kind of see what their specialty is. I am an advocate of asking all of the questions you need to be comfortable with your therapist. I am someone who saw 5 therapists because I was not going to settle on who my therapist was. Therapy is vulnerable. It's vulnerability. And so you must be comfortable enough with your therapist to be vulnerable. And if you are not comfortable enough to be vulnerable, move right along. For those who may have Kaiser, if they say that they do not have a therapist that meets your criteria, they can then outsource you and actually still have to pay for those services. So you want to look into that and make sure that you are asking and being an advocate for yourself.
That's very vital information, and hopefully we can get in touch after the interview, so you could send me those links and I'll post them.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I have a list. So within the next day or two, I'll definitely make sure you get it.
Oh, perfect. And so for those who are looking for a therapist and wondering what questions that they should ask in order to feel comfortable with that therapist, what are some of the questions that you asked yourself and asked of those therapists in your search for the perfect one?
One thing that I asked, especially after that first one, was I asked them where they stood on faith and on spirituality. I asked them how did they feel about medication. I asked them if they were forced medication. I asked them I asked them if they were looking to diagnose me. I asked them if they were people-centered or disorder-centered. And I don't really suggest that everybody do this, but I did do it. I actually changed my answers on a suicide intake to see if my therapist was paying attention. Because I had told my therapist that I had a psychology background, And so I needed someone who was going to hold me accountable. And so that session I walked out of, I said, you're not for me. And she was like, why? I said, because I changed my suicide intake answer and you didn't see it. And I need someone who's going to pay attention to me. So, you know, I read body language. Sometimes I might bring up race or racism in a session to see how the therapist is going to respond in that first consultation, to see if the therapist is right for me. I might bring up things such as grounding and herbs, and I might ask them, what is your philosophy? And if something doesn't sit right, talk that out with them. And if they're not willing to meet you halfway and talk to you, then they're not the ones for you. While at the same time, you are holding yourself accountable and making sure that you're not looking for a therapist who is just a yes person.
Right. I was just going to say that because it's so easy for a lot of us who are not used to seeking therapy to talk to our friends, and usually our friends affirm what our beliefs are, but sometimes that's why we seek therapy, to get that outer perspective, to say, okay, this line of thinking shouldn't be this way. It can be harmful to you, you know, for whatever reason. But similar to those questions that you brought up, you want to make sure that while they're making those judgments, it's with your best interests at heart.
Mm-hmm.
Considering
Absolutely.
all the things you said, faith, their stance on racism, their stance on various issues, their stance on medication, you know, because there are people who follow a more holistic view in life. So I think those are wonderful examples of questions that people can think about when looking for a therapist.
And I'm glad that there's more holistic therapists who are out and who are being themselves unapologetically and with sincerity, intentionality, and knowing that there are. So I'm excited for where mental health is going for our people.
Right. Yeah, because I've seen a lot of people who are former patients of psychiatrists talking about their experiences with medication. And I think that's a new forefront that we're going into in medicine, is the role of medication in mental health. So that's a very good topic to consider when it comes to that.
Right. Yeah, and I've seen people who have been able to use medication to help them, and they have a supportive psychiatrist and psychologist who are like, okay, it's only temporary because you're in a crisis. And so since you're in a crisis, we're going to do it for 1-2 months to get you stable while you get used to your new routine, things like that. So that's not to say don't ever take medication. But it's being cautious, it's being cognizant, it's being aware, it's being informed. And at the same time, still listening within yourself, and knowing, you know, your spirit tells you if you really need to.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, because, you know, everyone's medical profile is different. And like we said before, they may respond differently to medication. So for some people it works, and some people, you know, they have to try different types of medications or none at all. It's just a case by case basis. So I'm happy to have this conversation because it's something that should not be taboo and should be discussed. Yeah. And you're also the founder and executive director of the Natural We community, which is a nonprofit that focuses on the healing, empowerment, and celebration of Black African people and culture. So could you tell us more about how you created this initiative and what future plans you have for it?
Yes, Natural We community. I love Natural We. We are a nonprofit. This started off as a one-time hair show. When I was in my master's program, the end of my undergrad into my master's program at DH, we used to do hair shows, natural hair shows. And I used to look around. I loved the hair show. And I used to look around. I was like, we can do this in the community. We can do this in the community. But I put it off, of course. And then one day a church mom hit me with her cane because I hadn't done the hair show in the community. Right? You gotta love church moms. Gotta love church moms. She's like, why haven't you done it yet? Like, oh my goodness, right? And then like the next week, like 2 other church moms hit me. I was like, really? This is Okay. Brought it to the community, and we had a goal to raise $1,500 for a Black school in Los Angeles called Marcus Garvey. We ended up raising $1,700. And after the show, I was like, cool, we did it, right? Assignment over. No. When's the next event? So what's naturally doing? So I had a team with me. Tim Bryant is absolutely amazing. He's great. He's our associate director. I was like, they were like, we gotta start a nonprofit. And I was like, well, who's gonna start this nonprofit? They were like, you. I said, oh, y'all on board with me. We are starting this, right? And so we now do financial literacy workshops. We do self-care workshops. We've done workshops on therapy. We've done building school strategies, workshops, all these things. But our main staple is the hair show. Well, fast forward a few years, 3 hair shows down. We've raised $4,000 for 2 schools and 1 nonprofit. COVID hit. We couldn't do the hair show last year. We were trying to figure out how to stay engaged with our community. So we actually started Community Hour of Powers on Facebook Live, on Zoom and Facebook Live, where we kind of like what you're doing, interview people in the community. What are they doing? Have these discussions. We've had discussions on Pan-Africanism, on mental health, on financial literacy, all of these things. And then we actually started a food drive. And at first it was once a month, where we would actually feed hot lunches to people to help during COVID. And it actually turned into a food bank with 3 locations. So every Tuesday, every Thursday, second and fourth Mondays, second Saturdays, and third Sundays, we are feeding the community with organic fruit, organic vegetables, chicken, meat, onions, so just food, just food. And it's absolutely amazing. And everything that we do is African centered, Black people oriented. Anyone can come. We feed everybody, right? Anyone can come and be part of and hear the spoken word night or hear the talent night or whatever. But who you will see on stage is people who look like us. And not only that, but it's men and women. And it's intergenerational. We really mean what we say when we mean community. Now, sometimes the guys need to do their thing, and sometimes the ladies need to do their thing, and that's okay. But at the end of the day, we all come together and we are a unit. And so it's going well. We actually have a hair show coming up. It is not in person due to COVID, but we have a virtual hair show coming up, which I'm very, very excited about. We are raising money for a Black school called RBG Academy. It's going to be the show will air Juneteenth weekend. You can see it on demand, $10, but we want to raise money for the school. Half of their kids already have their own business. All of their kids. Yes, all of their kids actually have their own stock. I was like, this 6-year-old had stock before I did. Hold on. Wait a minute. Right? And they've done their business pitches, and it's so completely African-centered, and we're just really, really excited to continue to just build community and really practice and engage community on a level where we can come together, and it's a celebration. It's an upliftment. We're not focusing on our pain. We're focusing on our faith. We're focusing on our spirit. We're focusing on our resilience and our happiness and our joy, and who we are, and our love. Because at the end of the day, we must love.
Yes. I love everything about that. I love the financial literacy aspect. I love the fact that it's intergenerational. You're feeding the community with organic food. How can we get involved to help your organization?
So you can get involved in a few ways. One, I can make sure I send this to you. If you would like to donate, we have PayPal, we have Venmo, we have Cash App. You can email us at naturalweedcommunity@gmail.com. You can call or text us 424-285-3443 if you would like to volunteer. But what I would say right now, our immediate is please support the hair show. That we really want to just show love to RBG Academy, and it also helps us. And then going from there, Feel free to follow us on Instagram at Natural Weed Community, on Facebook at Natural Weed Community. We have a Twitter, but I'm not really good at Twitter, so I wouldn't go to our Twitter. One day. And just follow us and help spread the word. The more we're able to spread the word and come together. And if you would like to be interviewed, if you are someone who is doing some work, even if you think it's small, it's probably not small. There's an African proverb that says, if you think you are too small, you have not spent the night with a mosquito. And mosquitoes are very tiny, but make a big impact. So all of these things are ways to get involved with Natural Weed Community, and we just thank you for the support, even if it's just as simple as a share.
Oh, that's amazing. Definitely send me the information, and I'll do my best to share.
Thank you.
All that I can. And one final question I have for you is, what advice would you give to anyone who may be struggling with maintaining personal wellness during these times?
Give yourself grace. It's okay to struggle. I would say it's okay to struggle. If you know you are struggling, seek help. There are people who really, really wish to help you while giving yourself grace. We are not perfect beings. We can only be our best. We've only been called to be our best. And when we strive to be our best every day, the growth happens, the wellness happens, the healing happens. But give yourself grace and listen to yourself. Not those loud, racing thoughts, but that quiet, strong voice. Listen to it and know that there are people who are in your corner. Just open your mouth, ask for help, and someone's going to come.
I love that. Especially the part about giving yourself grace, because we can be so hard on ourselves. I know a lot of us had a lot of plans before this pandemic hit, and we got hard on ourselves on something that was completely out of our control, and I think a lot of us were able to make that adjustment, and some of us are still trying to make that adjustment to reschedule, replan, refocus, reboot, and it's okay. It's going to take everyone a different pace to get there. And it's also it's not constant. Sometimes we have to reset every day. I always like to go with the mantra of take things a day at a time. Give yourself a pat on the back for the things that you were able to accomplish that day, even if it was getting out of bed, going to work, and smiling through whatever you had to go through before you get home. Just pat yourself on the back for all of it, because every day is a blessing. And, like you said, there's always somebody out there who's in your corner who wants to help you win, who wants to see you win. And sometimes we can let those loud voices that are a lot of times fictitious tell us that no one wants to see us win. But there's always someone out there, even if it's one person, who wants to see you win. So don't be afraid to ask for help, because there's always help out there for you. So I love that. I love that community feel, and you're definitely cultivating that with your nonprofit and everything that you're doing.
I appreciate it. And if I could just add one more thing, we don't have to come out of this pandemic when outside is open full swing. There was a reason why we felt so run down when the pandemic hit, because we were just constantly going and going and going. Part of giving ourselves grace is also saying no and creating the boundaries that we have learned within the pandemic and prioritizing ourselves. So we don't have to end up having every single weekend packed anymore. We can still have that balance, and that helps us create community as well as focus on self at the same time.
Right. I love that. I love that sentence that you mentioned about boundaries, because I've found that ever since the pandemic started, we moved from this physical to virtual space in a lot of ways, whether it be work, school, even just socializing. And so the boundaries that we had for ourselves in the physical world kind of didn't translate 100% to the virtual world, and we had to reframe that. And sometimes we kind of let those boundaries down. And it's just this sensory overload of people and, social networking and all of that. And it's okay to pull back from it, to go on hiatus. And, you don't even have to ask for permission. I see a lot of people say, hey guys, I need to take 2 weeks. Like, personally, I just leave. Like, I don't know if that's rude, but I just leave because I feel like,
hit the chat. I'll talk to y'all later.
You just have to, because it's so much going on. And it's okay to, I think what you said too about not having to come out of the pandemic full force is very true, because a lot of people in the beginning were like, oh, just treat this as a cocoon and come out as a butterfly, come out with that book and all. It's like, hey, I survived that stuff. That's a lot. Not everyone who went into the pandemic survived. So,
right.
You don't have to come out as a superstar or whatever in this year.
Why are you putting this unnecessary expectation on ourselves? Like, it's like we all of a sudden we're like, I'm gonna learn 50 million languages, I'm gonna have the best business plan ever, and all of a sudden you're wondering why you're stressed. Child, lay down, sit down, go to sleep. Yeah. Sit with yourself and journal right quick and really figure out who you want to be and go from there. But we're putting so much extra pressure on ourselves when we just really need to be us.
Yeah. You're right. And it's like you're expecting yourself to accomplish these things that you've been working on your whole life, and you want that to come out in a year. And some people were able to do that. Some people were, but that's not the norm in many cases, and that's okay.
Absolutely. I see you all commenting. Thank you. This has been wonderful, and we appreciate your comments. You guys have come in with some nuggets, and it's really, really beautiful to see. And I love how we're coming together in a space of love and community and non-judgment. And it's really a safe space to have these conversations. So thank you, Dr. Beauty, for creating this.
Oh, the pleasure is mine. I'm thankful to everyone in the chat as well, and the communities I've connected with during the pandemic, because they've been that supportive group for me as well as for each other. Just not being judgmental, being able to express ourselves fully is just a blessing to be able to do that with everyone here. So I thank everyone and yourself for being receptive to that initiative.
Thank you. And thank you again, Tiff, for this connect. Tiffany, Dr. Tiffany Caesar, we appreciate you. And I must shout out my cuz. Hey, cuz. Hi, Cass. There's someone in the chat talking about fashion. So, go ahead and scroll and find your fashion friend. I'm just loving this.
Lovely. Yes. I welcome everyone who's coming in for the first time. And anyone who's in the chat who wants to be a guest in the future, please let me know. I'm always down for these type of conversations, because it's this type of uplifting that we need, not even just during the pandemic, but going forward. So I'm always looking to network, help sponsor nonprofits any way that we can, and just connect with the community. So it's been such a pleasure and honor to speak with you tonight. And let's continue to connect. Let me know any way we can support your nonprofit.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Working on.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much, and let me know how I can support you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it. I will do so. And thanks everyone for joining in and all the lovely comments, and be well, and we'll be back soon with another episode of Testimony Tuesdays.
Sounds good.
All right. Have a great evening.
You too. Take care.
You too. Thank you.